This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. He speaks to the geeks and the musical freaks, but sometimes popular but mostly a freak because he's James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
Anyway,
I think it's very important to do podcasts whilst you're having a massage, especially with somebody as wonderful as yourself. It just all feels quite relaxing.
Oh, that's such a lovely way to start this. I was wondering whether our initial interaction about having massages would be lost and it wouldn't be recorded. So thanks for adding that in there. How do you feel about massages? Me and my wife, my wife, Kat, wonderful woman.
It's brilliant.
When we got married, we went to Costa Rica on a honeymoon and we had a massage, and it was my first ever massage. And it was in this like hut in the jungle, like no exaggeration. And it was like, I'm not really someone, I'm from Yorkshire. I don't really like strangers touching me, it's like a thing. But it was pretty wild. And I did come out of it going, why do I not have massages like every day?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? You chat to people and some people will be like, oh yeah, I have massages all the time. And you'll feel a bit odd that you don't have more massages. I got into the massage world because when we were, when Razorlight were, when we were flying high back in the noughties, that was the kind of thing that we would have, like backstage or whatever, there'd be a masseuse, and it blew my mind back then. I was like, I didn't even know that this was a thing that people did, let alone that you could have sort of regularly. So that kind of got me into it. So I have to say, these days, I am sort of, I'm a bit of a ponce that enjoys, having a good back rub and having my shoulders sorted out. But I know what you mean. I'm not from Yorkshire, but I know what you mean when there's something a bit like crazy luxurious about it, isn't there? Where it's actually very good for you. And
listen, I'm a mentally ill man who's been having therapy for well over 10 years, and every time I have therapy I still feel bad about having therapy. I still feel like why can't I handle this on my own? And I feel a little bit similar about massages, you see, but I feel like that about like quilted toilet paper. There's an element of I feel like I need to suffer. Yes,
I completely agree with you, and I know that you've had and suffer and struggle a lot with your mental health. I think that there's a lot I can relate to. I'm not trying to say. I mean, I know you've had a rough time, and you're smashing it and doing brilliant and wonderful things about it, which must be.
Thank you, mate.
Right, but I think that there is like a sort of a guilt thing. I've always felt quite guilty about anything that happens that's good. Anything nice that I do or anything good that happens, I think I'm always like, well, there's got to be something terrible, around the corner. So I can relate.
Yeah, it's weird, You're Winchester, aren't you?
I'm from Winchester. Yeah, I am no longer there, but I'm from Winchester.
No, just because when I did Rosie Plain on the podcast, and she was telling me that your dad used to teach her.
No, my dad might have been a doctor.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It was some.
Well,
it was some kind of front-facing role. Yeah. He was a doctor.
That makes sense. Yeah, my mum's a teacher, dad's a doctor, and in Winchester, I would forever run into people who would be like, "Your dad's my doctor," which was always quite surreal. But yeah, she's lovely. She was at school she was in my brother's year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think they used to be quite close.
Yeah, she is properly brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a good little segue actually when we were talking mental health, because your last solo release was the record with Matt Haig, right?
Yes, yeah. We made a record with the same title as his book, Reasons to Stay Alive. I mean, I didn't sort of get into it or do it because I didn't do it with the intention of it being a record about mental health at all.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't think that was a sort of a lovely thing that happened about it, and obviously lyrically, because he wrote it all, it was a lot to do with him and what he's been through and how he's feeling. So it did end up with a slightly more leaning towards the theme of mental health. But initially, I was thinking about doing a new solo record, and I basically couldn't be asked to write the lyrics. And I thought, how could I sort of try and engineer a sort of a Elton John, Bernie Taupin scenario where I could just sit at the piano for a couple of months and tinkle away to someone else's words? And it was such a magical experience because each day or every couple of days he'd just send me a new lyric. So initially it was a sort of a straightforward album with a writing process of someone writing the lyrics and somebody writing the music. But yeah, I guess because of everything that he's done and everything that he's been through, it ended up having a theme that ran through it, very much based around mental health.
It's dead interesting, because if you'd asked me back in the day, I mean, it was always clear to me that when you're in Razorlight, because you wrote so much in that band, or you definitely wrote the really big songs, the iconic songs that the majority of them. I always thought, well, there's obviously more to Andy than just playing the drums, but in the interim of your time away from Razorlight and also to the present day, you've just kind of done so many interesting things that I guess there would be people back in the day that might have thought the drummer in Razorlight is going to do this, and he's going to soundtrack cartoons, and he's going to work with Tom from Editors. It's a very eclectic discography. Was that kind of like the intention? Like, are you always trying to do something you've never done before?
I don't know. I don't think I'd love to say, yeah, that's how that all happened. But I think I'm way more. I'm much more of a scatterbrain, sort of like completely disorganized mess of a. I always think I'm like a sort of a tangled up ball of wool. I don't think I planned anything, but I do know that when I left the band, and obviously I'm back with Razorlight these days. But when I left the band, I think I was just like, I felt so unbelievably lucky for everything that had happened. I felt so grateful for it all that I thought, well, if I'm going to leave, and obviously I left because I felt like I had to. At that point in my life, I was like, I can't do this anymore, and it was quite a scary jump into the dark, to be honest with you. Immediately you're getting comments from people in your family or close friends saying like, what the hell are you doing? Why on earth would you leave that? So I think I made this plan in my head. The only bit of planning I did was that I said, I'm going to just try and do as much as I can of everything, because this has given this band, this wonderful band that I love so much, but that I can't handle, has given me so much. And I need to make sure that I, it's a little bit like what we were talking earlier on with the massages and the quilted toilet paper. I think I felt like, if I've been given this wonderful opportunity and all of this stuff, then I need to make sure I really, really pull my weight and do everything I can. So I just basically left the band and just decided to like make a solo album, try and do a film, go and play drums with We Are Scientists, just do as much as possible so that it didn't feel like I'd just left and gone and sat on the couch.
It was really pleasing to me when you emailed me the other day saying, should we do this podcast? Because obviously it had been in the works for some time. Yes. And I kept joking to Kat that it was like Andy Burrows is the last remaining member of the We Are Scientists cinematic universe, because I'd done Tim Wheeler. So I was like, oh well, I've done everyone in that orbit now. But do you know about this guy Newski that they're knocking around with?
And did he just support them on tour?
Yeah, and he does a really good podcast. I'm not going to say it's better than mine, but he has spoken to a lot of people that I would love to speak to. So there you go. So I feel like I need to do Newski after you, because he definitely feels part of the gang now, part of the Avengers. To
sort of complete the
set.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Well, okay. Well, I'm happy that I'm contributing to the sort of penultimate, full, as it were.
Yeah, I mean they're friendly lads, though, aren't they? They kind of befriend everyone, so I'm sure there'll be someone along again in a minute. But I do feel like you're maybe like the Captain America of the ensemble. I feel, dependable, likable. Kind of keeps a steady beat.
Well, sort of what? Yeah, metaphorically and actually, I hope.
Yeah, of course, that's what I was doing there. I'm a journalist after all, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I met those guys probably like halfway along the way with Razorlight, and I immediately fell in love with them, as you say, like most of us have done. And we were really, really close. And then when I left Razorlight, there was just a very heavy pull towards them. I think, sort of emotionally for me, I immediately moved to New York for a period of time to basically just to be near them, because I think I'd just been lacking that sort of just real closeness and being able to play music with really good friends, and that's not to do the lads in Razorlight a disservice. We're close, and they're like brothers to me, but we've always been a bit dysfunctional, whereas my relationship with Keith and Chris was just has always been very easy, very straightforward, a lot of laughing, and the fact that I got to play drums with them for a couple of albums and a bit of touring was just, I think it was just something I really needed to do. And the greatest thing about it is that I've ended up with two of the best friends that I could ever have hoped to have met, So
yeah, absolutely.
Keith's coming over here in a couple of weeks to come and stay, and it's just lovely that it's lasted the way it has, and that we got to do some music, and that maybe in the future we'll do something again together. But it doesn't matter. That's what I love about my relationship and my vibe with them. It doesn't really matter. All of it's special. You know what I mean?
What kind of house guest is Keith Murray?
Yeah, he's actually really very good, very tidy, very polite. He loves accompanying me to the pub. He's perfect.
He is a bit of an Anglophile, isn't he?
I think he is. I think I think there's something. I guess they've not been able to avoid that, having done so much over here in the UK, and the UK haven't taken to them the way they did.
I mean, every time I catch up with those guys, we end up talking about really horrible horror movies.
Right? Yeah.
Like truly horrible horror movies. Like, given that I think I'm a fairly nice guy and they are very nice guys,
yeah,
that we definitely have a taste for the disgusting. He doesn't foist any of them on you.
He doesn't foist any of them on me, and I guess it's lovely to hear that you have that bond, horror movie bond, because I think that what's so lovely about those two is they'll if there's a day off on tour, or just when they're back home in New York, they'll go off to the cinema together, like an old married couple.
Yeah, like so, Bert and Ernie or something.
Yeah. It's so adorable, and I can't sit still for very long at all with anything anywhere, and so I've never really. Whenever they used to do that and asked me if I wanted to go, I always said no, because I can't do it. So it's nice to hear that you're part of that, part that they have, because I've always thought it's magical. I love it.
Yeah, no, totally. Listen, there's no point in scratching at healed wounds, but I did have a conversation with you back in the noughties,
yeah,
and it can't have been that long before you left Razorlight, and you did say to me, you were like, I don't want to do this anymore. Can't do this anymore. So when you got back with them, like time heals wounds and such like, but I was surprised. Is it? Well, I guess that kind of, I have kind of listened to you talk about how you came back to the fold, and a little bit about kind of who reached out and how you got back together. But do you just feel like you all grew up, that you all matured, or maybe kind of muted the elements of each other's personalities that made it difficult?
I mean, maybe there's, obviously there must be a bit of that, because we are all 10 years older, and it is, it's a different time, and Razorlight, although we still get out and play to some pretty big crowds, and there's a few of our songs that are still kicking around, and it's lovely that that's happened. It's not the same as when we were, I don't know how to describe something like that. We were in the charts, and I guess for a short period of time we were pretty cool, and it was all kicking off for us. Whereas Now it's, you know, it's a different thing, you know, and so there must be an element of having grown up, and all of us having grown up a little bit, but it's still, you know, I've always thought, ever since I've been back in the band, I don't like the idea of lying and pretending that it's just all brilliant now and we're just all grown up and isn't it wonderful? Because I don't think it's, you know, I don't think that's not the whole picture. It's still complicated, and you know, certain relationships within the band are sometimes still at times difficult, but I think we all agreed that, you know, that there was something brilliant about having this band, and about the fact that it exists and the tunes are out there, and they seem to still, you know, some of them seem to still get played in places, and lots of people know them, and you go and play a show and there's some kids singing along and you're thinking, this is nuts, this is still a thing, and wouldn't it be great if we could make this work and have it as part of our life. But I think it wasn't quite the sort of explosive reunion that I thought it might be when we first did the film, when I went down to France to meet Johnny, because I think with the past 3 years having gone by, I realized that we need, and still do need, the time together to sort of nurture things and look after it and make sure that we can, if we're to keep this together so that we are a band going forward, it's going to take a little bit more than just smashing out a brand new album and woohoo going on a massive tour and it all happens in the space of, you know, 6 months, because that's not how it works all the time. And so this is an insanely long answer to a question that was probably quite simple.
No, it was good. I guess that I thought, you know, I always kind of felt like, quite, sorry is the wrong word, because it's kind of what it's all about, but I guess that because Johnny was so, you know, because, you know, having worked at the Enemy for a long time, or what the Enemy was, like, Johnny was kind of, you know, it was like he was getting egged on all the time by Enemy journalists or Enemy editors, and he seemed happy to oblige, and that sets a really high bar to deliver on. But then it's interesting you saying that about how kind of maybe the reunion wasn't quite as explosive as you kind of expected it to be, but then also they're funny days, aren't they? I mean, it's like I was thinking, I was looking up, I was going, oh, when was that? And I was going, well, since then, the entire world has shut down.
Yeah.
And the music industry has kind of changed in so many ways.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I think you're right, it sort of needs like the work put in, doesn't it, really, to...
Yeah. Well, I think we want to be a band. I think if we're to make this work, we want to make a really brilliant album, and I think that's kind of what I meant by it not being the explosive start. I wasn't trying to knock us. I kind of meant that it wasn't as easy as getting back together and getting in the studio and bashing out 12 new songs and hey presto, we're back. It's more like, no, we got back together, we've been in the studio a hell of a lot, but we've also spent a lot of time apart again because we're having to look after this in a different way. And we're doing a lot of work with youth at the moment out in Spain, and hopefully it's a new record, but we're taking it for, you know, we're doing it in bits, and it feels really special. It feels really special to have got to this point. But I don't know, I feel like there's been a couple of surreal moments in this kind of like new world. We played Isle of Wight Festival a couple of years ago, and we headlined the second stage, like the tent. And I just didn't know what to expect at all. I really didn't know whether this was going to be, you know, it had been so long and it was quite new in our reunion that I was like, well, who the hell's going to, almost like, who's going to be there? What? And I was looking at Instagram of the days before to see like the Kaiser Chiefs or Mel C or some other people that played. And I was looking at this sea of people. And I was sort of thinking to myself, we've played to some fairly big crowds since we've been back, but I'm like, I've not seen anything like that since the noughties.
Right.
So I was really kind of like, what's this going to be? And then we got to the back of the stage before we were going to walk on, and it was so noisy. And I was like, flipping heck, maybe it is a little bit like what I looked on Instagram last night. And I went and peeked through and I was like, shit, that's a lot of people. That's almost like the old days. And then we played this set, and it was really odd because it was like I was looking out at a crowd that had, I guess, some young people at the front, some middle-aged people in the middle, and some older people at the back. And I was like, fucking hell, that's a proper like across the board crowd all singing to these songs and singing them back, and it just blew my mind. And because it was quite early on, it really confused me, because it hasn't all been like that. There's been moments like that, and then there's been moments that haven't been like that. But it's odd. It's really weird. Whereas back in the day, although it was totally bananas and it got really, really big really quick, at least it kind of made sense. Like, I understood what was happening. I understood that this band, was hot at the time, and so it made sense. Whereas this time round, I'm a bit like, it sort of blows my mind when we go and do that, and there's all these people and they all know the songs, and you're just like, it's like you lived a different life, you've sort of photocopied it and come back, and it's still, it's odd. So I'm really looking forward to doing some new music, and we'll get there, but it's just, we need to be careful with ourselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird, like when I was at the NME, I remember when you did really blow up. I remember in editorial meetings, we used to have conversations of almost like a Razorlight even ours anymore, a Razorlight even like an NME band, are they?
Well, yeah, because we went from being very NME, didn't we? And we were on the cover a few times, and then it got quite big, and then for some reason we weren't in that club anymore, and I think that was confusing, for maybe you guys and us. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, I think it was just that thing of, oh, you can buy their records in the supermarkets. They're really popular. Maybe that's, but it was a proper conversation, like a heated conversation. There were people who were saying, well, we've been on this journey with this band so far. Why would we bail out now? And then there were people being, oh, well, they're getting praised by Bono, and they're just Johnny's hanging out with actresses in Texas. It's a different world now for them.
Nowadays that's what everyone's.
Yeah,
that's what I always. That's why I'm still confused, because now pop groups are considered, they're kind of like hot stuff of now, and they'll be with. Everything seems to have merged into one, but I think maybe it was too confusing back then. I don't really know, but I'm totally with you. It's odd to think that I've got no idea myself.
Yeah, but I still meant it as a positive in a way, because I do think there is that thing, I think if the music industry is really, well, I guess that kind of like within the remit of what I do, that I felt has been a failing. If it's done one thing really badly, it's been bad at breaking acts. I guess that kind of that star machine doesn't exist in the way that it once did. But I do think that acts that sold a lot of records and still get those records played on radio stations that people listen to, that they listen to in factories or warehouses or what have you. I still think those bands, like, you kind of can't take that away from them. And I do think that's the thing with Razorlight, is you did have hits. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, that's something that I just think that acts breaking through now, they're just going to really struggle, because there's not the same infrastructure that there was
absolutely
20 years ago.
Yeah, there's the infrastructure has totally changed, and there's no focus like before. So I think I totally agree with you, and I think it's probably a little bit what I was just blabbing on about that Isle of Wight thing, and then there's a tour that we did last year. I think when you play, there's like probably 3 or 4 of our songs where you can really feel a room full of people, probably half of whom might have been there the first time round, and half of whom, I think probably a lot of them were really new. That was one of the things that blew my mind. But it was just, there's a moment, 4 or 5 songs where it just totally kicks off. And then obviously with like America and Golden Touch and Fall to Pieces, everybody just seems to know it and sing it like it was back then. So I do think I personally feel very grateful to have had an experience in a band where we got to actually make hits. I think that's what you were saying. I think like it feels like that might be something that isn't so, what do I mean? It's not so the norm anymore, is it? I mean, now you can go and look at a song and how it's streamed, and it might be in the billions, and yet we might still not know it.
Yeah, that just worries me about the culture in general, though. Like, I do feel like we are, even away from music, it's like I have conversations with, I'm quite online, right? So I guess that's part of it. But I will have conversations with friends now about things that are, big things that happen in the world, or big movies or what have you. And people I know just have no idea what these things are, because they live in their bubble. Yeah. There's almost like no kind of consciousness with our culture, and that does scare the shit out of me, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I think about it a lot. I sort of haven't been able to articulate it quite as well as you just did. I think it is frightening because it's confusing, isn't it? It's like I feel like I'm sort of living my daily life and chatting to people, and there are certain things that remind me of how I remember things being, and yet there's also like this sort of like parallel situation where there's just a bunch of stuff that only certain people know about. And like, you know, like, I mean, even when you're talking about things that are on Netflix, most of us watching Netflix, but you can still go down the pub and chat to someone and be like, and they'll be like, have you not seen Grangleporth? Yeah, like the big, and be like, what I'm on Netflix all the time, you know. And the same with music. People will be like, you've not heard of such and such? They're doing 50 nights at the O2, and you'd be like, I've never. Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah, it's totally bonkers. I also think there's weird things as well where I can't work out whether to be lighthearted about this and relate it to music, or actually just sort of be realistic and talk about it in terms of what's going on in the world. But it's almost like I feel like if you've got a room of people together, British people, and you said like the country's in a mess.
Yeah.
What's wrong? Like, what's the biggest problem the country faces? If you had a room of 20 people, I really feel like there would be real variety in what people would say. And you could almost say that's because there's an awful lot wrong with the country. But I think it's also because everyone consumes their own news or their own media. So
now.
Yeah, and I just find that so disorientating. And I think it's totally the same with music as well.
Yeah, no, totally, and it is quite terrifying. And I mean, I only ever sort of take sort of solace in the fact that, or take comfort in the fact that it's still lovely listening to music, and it's still lovely watching, you know, brilliant films or you know, series on Netflix, and at least that's there. At least that feeling still works.
Yeah, I just watched a documentary about Travis this morning. I have a soft spot. I have a soft spot for Travis anyway. Yeah. But yeah, mate, have you seen that film?
No. What, Travis the band?
Yeah.
See how I love Travis. I didn't even know that.
Well, this is the point in question, isn't it? I think it came out 2018. I'm speaking to Wyndham Wallace, the guy that made it, actually, after I speak to you, and it's such a brilliant documentary, and it's made me think loads of things about my relationship with music and also as a music journalist. And the film's from the premise of he doesn't like Travis, and like Travis don't really like music journalists, but they respect him, so they ring him up and say, "Hey, will you interview us in this documentary we're making?" And it ends up being him sort of analysing how his role within the music press is almost like hardened his musical fandom, how kind of he's almost sort of lost the ability to just enjoy things, you know. I haven't explained that particularly well, and when I do speak to him, I'll explain it much better on that episode. But why am I saying this? No, but it was so amazing, just kind of like sinking into the world of that band for an hour and a half. I think it's a bit less than that, actually.
Where is that then? Where did you find that?
All right, so it's called Almost Fashionable. And
Okay.
if you just Google Travis Almost Fashionable, and it's on like a Vimeo thing, you can like buy it for like £4 or something.
Oh, I'd love to watch that.
I've talked about it a little bit this morning on Twitter, and there's been about 3 people. So if Wyndham Wallace is listening to this, then you know, no need to thank me. Where are you at with your solo stuff? It's been a little while since that Matt Haig record.
Yeah, I'm just finishing an album right now, and it's quite a funny couple of months at the start of this year for me, because I'm doing a film and I'm finishing my album, and it's the first time I've ever done anything at home, like properly at home. You know, I've spent the last couple of years trying to learn how to record sort of by myself. I mean, I've still got an engineer, but and it's been brilliant. It's been quite, you know, I was saying I'm not very good at sort of sitting still or doing one thing for very long, but it's been quite a nice experiment having this, you know, having the ability to be able to record at home. I mean, I think it's still important to get to a studio and be with other people, but it's quite nice to do it like this. So
didn't you do your first solo record on GarageBand?
I did that GarageBand at home, but that was I guess that was different, because that literally was just me on was it a laptop or a phone? It must have been a laptop because the phones didn't. Yeah, you can do that then at that point. But yeah, I just did it on a laptop. But I've never been very good with like MIDI and stuff, so it was just literally me playing into the microphone at the top of the computer and then just trying to like mix it to sound, But this is I have stepped up. I mean, that was 12 years ago. I've stepped up slightly in my abilities. So, but no, yeah, I'm finishing a solo record at the moment that will hopefully come out. I'm hoping sort of later on in the spring.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm looking forward to doing something on my own again like that.
What's the film, if you can say?
I'm not sure if I did ask the guy before I was coming on here with you whether I'm allowed to talk about it. I don't know if I am, but it's
yeah, don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I won't get myself in trouble. Anyway, he's the director is a really lovely chap who has won an Oscar, but I think this is his directorial debut. So I think he's been in a different field within filmmaking, and this is he's stepping out into directing, and it's really cool. It's a great movie, and it's amazing to be working on it. It's very different from kind of anything I've done before. It's very much it's the complete opposite of The Snowman and the Snow Dog, and it's not it's not Ricky Gervais. So it's a very new thing for me, and it's pretty early days as well. So I'm sort of trying to do a couple of days on my record and then move over to the film, and then I go back to my record when I get scared of whether I'm doing a job on the film. So yeah, it's quite an interesting time, and then we'll get into Razorlight in March.
Yeah, I saw those dates. I really love the Afterlife soundtrack.
Right.
I wrote quite a lot about that series when it came out. I did some stuff for the NME about it. And I don't know, it was a weird one. It was like, I had a bit of grief going on in my life at the time. And there was little bits of sort of frustrations about the culture. And I sort of found some of the presentation of that within that show. I sort of, sometimes when you watch a show and you're like, oh yeah, I've been thinking that. It's really great that that's been refracted back at me. But like, I thought the soundtrack was just so, I don't know, just sort of so lovely, really. Here comes the police. They're coming to take me away for liking Ricky Gervais. So, but no, I really love the soundtrack. So props to you on that.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, well, it's obviously it was made even better by the fact that every so often he'd put in like a brilliant song by somebody.
Yeah.
But it was such a joy. I mean, it's been pretty incredible to work with him. Full stop. I think I spent the last. I think we started working together in 2014, so it's been 10 years, and it's been all sorts of different stuff. Like Life on the Road was very much just a rock band type scenario, and then Afterlife has been, completely different. But he's taught me so much about it. Like I feel like it's been such an honor to basically have honed, dare I say, my craft with Ricky Gervais. I mean, what a teacher! It's like,
hey, listen, he discovered Suede. The guy guy's got good ears.
He loves music. He's great to be in the studio with, because he just wants to. But when we get into the studio, he just wants to play and muck about and like do some tunes. Whereas I need to get on with this thing. But it's such a joy. I feel so unbelievably lucky that I've ended up working with him, because he's just he's become a great friend, but he's also just been very brilliant to me, and I've learned a lot from him.
Do you think it's because, I mean, obviously you're very talented, but do you think that part of it is that you are a nice guy with nice hair? Do you think that's a little bit why these opportunities come around? Because it doesn't feel like you are super careerist. It's like it just sort of feels a little bit like maybe you kind of amble into these things.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a little bit of, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I don't want to get sort of deep about it. I think when I was really little, drums were always something that I was pretty good at, and I was really short. I shot up to 6 foot when I was about 16, so I spent most of the secondary school years being very short, and the drums kind of came to my rescue, and I always found them quite easy, and I was pretty good. And I think that something to do with having been really good at the drums was enough for me. Like that sort of propelled me into feeling enough. I wasn't massively confident, but I was enough confident to start joining bands and try and do my thing. And then obviously at about 7 or 8 years later, when I was 23, Razorlight happened, and it went nuts. And at that point, I then had the similar sort of feeling with like, well, I've always quite enjoyed writing songs, but I don't really want to be. I've never wanted to be a songwriter, or was certainly not a frontman or anything. But I thought Johnny is being very encouraging. I'll join in on the songs. So I joined in on the songs, and then that went fucking nuts. And then, you know, I remember when we used to listen to the charts, and it was like, you know, and number one is Razorlight America. I remember genuinely thinking like, this is absolutely nuts. This wasn't even in my, even if I did have a plan, this wasn't in my plan. And it's sort of, it's gone like that a little bit. But I think what I'm trying to say is, I do think I have come to the conclusion that I must be quite talented, but I've never been like, well, I've never been like, I'm so talented, watch me smash this in my life. So I don't know, it must be a combination of there being some talent there, and hopefully me not just, perhaps maybe just not being a total wanker. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's funny. I've sort of come to I'm sort of having a bit of an epiphany about this at the moment, because I've always felt like a nice guy, but I've always a little bit's the Yorkshire thing, the working class thing, a bit of it's the OCD and the problems I've had with that. Yeah. There's always been quite a lot of anger in me, and quite a lot of, and I think the music press sort of, you know, music mattered to me so much. It was,
yeah.
Sometimes I just think that I had a lot of fury, and I've actually kind of realised that. And a lot of drive as well. And there's, you know, in lots of ways that helped me out. But I've actually started to think, when I look at the people I admire, I mean, scientists are part of this, if I'm being honest. When I look at the people I admire and I think, God, they're not afraid to show their like softness and their decency. And I think sometimes it's almost like I've been too scared to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you know, with you, like the We Are Scientists cinematic universe, you know, you and Tim Whelan and such like, there's a common theme there, which is that you're all good people.
Yeah.
No, I'm all for it. I think that's the way.
I like what you're saying. I understand. And I think it's important that you're saying that sometimes you perhaps didn't feel comfortable enough with being softer or nice. And, you know, and that can take you down a number of different paths. And I think that I definitely have moments where I'm like, oh, I must have been pretty driven because I've done that. And my sister said to me like a year or so ago when we were hanging out, she was like, didn't realize it. When I think back over your career, I didn't realize you were so driven. And I was like, well, I'm not sure that I realized that I'm so driven. But I suppose there's definitely a part of me that thinks, well, I must be more driven than I'm definitely more driven than I think I am, because otherwise I wouldn't have done anything. Do you know what I mean? I guess I would have. So I must have wanted to do this, and I must have enjoyed the fact that I was good enough and could do it. But I think I've just always placed being, and this is going to sound proper shit, so apologies, but I think I've just always placed being decent and listening to other people and hoping that they might listen to me. I think I've always found that more important than letting people know how great I am. Do you know what I mean? I think I'd rather just have a lovely chat with someone for 3 hours and then jump on the drums for 5 minutes. And if that makes them think I was a better person to hang out because I could also play the drums, then wicked. But they could also fuck off and not worry about it, and I would have enjoyed the chat. I don't know. I just think, yeah.
I mean, this is the most ex-enemy journalist thing that I will ever say. But it almost ties into Razorlight in a way, because I actually feel like what Razorlight deserve is a period. They deserve an era of their career where they make music without idiots like me saying, say something crazy, come on, say you're better than Dylan. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It sort of needs. I think you're a good enough band to have an era that's without all of that bollocks.
Yeah, and I think it's very cool of you to say that, because I think it was a strange meeting of very big characters back then, whether they were journalists like yourself. Yeah. I would hang out with you, or Johnny. You know, Johnny, I was always because I wasn't in the band at the very, very start. I was always a fan, and then I was a fan of us when I was in it. I had to leave because I couldn't do it, but I still remained interested and watched it. And even now, when I play on stage with the band, I still think he's phenomenal. I think he's completely and utterly, genuinely mysterious, because I've known him for 20 years and we've written songs together and been in band together, and I still don't fully understand it. He's 100% got something about him that I can't work out. But he's brilliant. He's phenomenal. He's great to sit behind and drum behind. But he's also quite difficult as well, you know. And I'm sure he finds me difficult. But I would love for Razorlight to, because I often think I'm going a bit mad. I'm like, but we're really good, and we were really good then, and we're really good now. Is it just because we don't get on that other people don't understand us, or is it, you know? So I'm really looking forward to and hoping that we can finish this record that we're making with Youth, and you know, yeah, and have it be a moment for us to actually have something that we've made just as a band who are still kicking about. You know, because you can overthink all of this, I think.
Listen, the story of my life is overthinking things, so I'm with you all the way there. The bloke Wyndham Wallace, the journalist Wyndham Wallace that I was talking about in this Travis movie, I'm speaking to him in 10 minutes, so I better wrap up. But
yes,
I actually think
that forever.
Well, this is the thing, you see. I feel like that's maybe one of the problems with this episode is that it should be longer. We should do it again down the line. I mean, it'll take 3 years for us to hook it up, but we should do it down the line when Razorlight are poised to make some new music.
I would love that, and honestly, like I actually think I feel better today for having had this chat. So thank you,
mate. Thank you for that. Me too, as well. I should say.
No. I'm going to get back to this massage.
Oh, I like that. I'll speak to you again, Andy.
Yeah, take care of yourself, mate. It's lovely to see you.
All right, bud. See you later, dude. Bye.
Bye.